How far would you go to uncover the truth? Today's story reveals the lengths one husband went to find out about his wife's secret life. She would put on her underwear and run home to hide her secret from her husband. But what was the secret? Today, we will tell you life stories and accounts of how wives are forced to use different ways to take pity on their husbands. Are you ready to find out the truth? I want to tell you a very ambiguous story, although some might not call it ambiguous. It was about a kiss, and you can say 100 years ago, which resulted in a worse than nuclear war. To help you understand the whole picture, I am 40 years old, my wife Elizabeth 36, and of course, has a child 10 years old. Everything is fine with money and so on. The beginning of the whole story, if of course, you can believe my dear wife, was one evening on February 23rd. Our colleagues in the organization and I, of course, congratulated each other. A little by the evening, we celebrated the whole thing in the workplace. The girls at work set the table for us. I call my wife. Liz, we are here. Well, this is the very little. If you have a chance, after work, come straight here for me. We'll celebrate here a little bit. Well, you can pick me up and drive, so I don't have to leave my car here. I'm good. If I'd known how this simple request of mine would end, I wouldn't have drank at all, and I would have picked up whoever and wherever I wanted at once. Long or short, the dinners at work that night were also a humbling event. They were there too, congratulating the staff. In general, we had more bottles of cognac that evening than expected, and some of our young people here began to play the bottle. Well, like young people play, and we are older just for fun. We are sitting. Anyway, I think it's time to write to my wife. Where are you? She's texting me. I'm getting in a cab. I'll be right there. Okay. I take some more cognac, stand closer to the exit. There's a window, at least to get some air, and the sleeves on my shirt, of course, are already rolled up. Mine and everyone else's is fine. All of a sudden, one of our youngest madams comes up, and she calls me by my name and patronymic. Anyway, there's that bottle there pointed at me, and she kind of has to kiss me here, and in general, not really expecting an answer from me, takes my chin right with two hands and kisses me, without taking away from me and turning her head to the staff. Well, sort of, so that they can see that she has completed this task. Well, as you have already realized, of course, at this point, my wife walks in as well. Oil painting. We're kind of standing there with this madam, just the two of us. It all looks like we stepped away from the collective for some business. We both smell of alcohol. Well, the last moments of the kiss, I think the wife saw perfectly well too. I pretended as if nothing had happened. There really wasn't anything going on. I had nothing to do with it, but it wasn't. While Lisa and I, my wife and I were in the car, we were talking as if nothing had happened. In fact, I figured we'd probably talk tomorrow, if we talked at all, and for nothing. The next day, my wife was already blacker than a cloud. I somehow explained to her what it was, and after a couple of days, she, kind of believed me. I exhaled, but it turned out far from that. A month goes by to 6 months, and every time, on occasion, and without it, my wife immediately reminds me of this case, and because of these reminders, fight more. I told her if she did not forgive me, she could have told me so, instead of forgiving it first, and then reminding me every day. As soon as I said that, and got really angry, she immediately took a step back, saying that she was kidding, and that she would relax. But if the quarrel again, she immediately reminds me of it all again. In short, found a string, how to act on the nerves. Here, so to speak, as it is impossible, I turned out to her something like a promotion. She had been working in a jewelry store, and after an employee in their larger office went on maternity leave, Elizabeth was offered the job. The neighborhood was a little farther from home, but the pay was higher, and so on. I generally agreed without asking me, and the schedule was from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., and the schedule was 3 days through 3. I, by the way, paid attention at once. It was the first time I had ever heard of such a schedule, but later found out what kind of schedule, what hobbies, except work, there were dinners. Anyway, it's been a year and a half, and then she walks into our lounge in the evening, and says, I'm sick of it all. At first I thought the conversation was about work. You don't give me any time or attention at all. Well, don't make promises that you will now. You're an adult, you can't be changed. I've made up my mind, I've been thinking for a long time. In short, the point is that I have to go out now. Of course, I'm shocked. The next day, I try to talk again, and she is not, all in the same spirit. Torture my presence. To cut a long story short, I was not going to torture anyone. I decided to go to a friend's house for a couple of weeks at their empty house. It happens that people get bored with each other, and as a result, we make up. But it turned out to be much more interesting. We are sitting with a friend at this dacha, and with his encouragement, we come to the conclusion that there is something for a reason. It has been a week and a half. The wife, in terms of communication, doesn't even scratch the surface. Yes, and crowned, we need a break from each other. In such stories usually means something else. Anyway, I think, well, did someone show up? My friend definitely thinks so. And in my brain, at once her surface is scheduled 3 days in 3. Long or short, it looks like she has someone. And that someone is connected to her at this exact time. 3 days in 3, from 9 in the morning until 8 at night. What to do? I called the next day at my wife's to talk. But no, she stayed in the position she was in. We'll take a break from each other, but we'll decide sometime later too. Yeah, sure. But anyway, there's nothing to do. I take my friend's car and drive right up to the driveway at 8 in the morning, so I can actually see where she's going and when. She gets out in the morning, jumps in a cab, and goes to this job of hers. I walk her there, driving to mine. Then in the evening, I decide to go to her place again, and see who will give her a ride home from work tonight. Well, if she got a ride. But then the situation repeats itself again. I can't follow my wife around indefinitely. I am also at work. In fact, there is no evidence. I have no guarantees that this is not nothing, and I do not do nonsense. In short, again, we are sitting at the cottage with a friend. And it has been almost a month. I come to our house and see my son. But Elizabeth doesn't say yes or no. I wouldn't want to talk about it now. Let's get through these days. And then we'll see what and where it takes us. Okay, imagine what I have to do. I mean, there's no reason to get divorced. But it's not a life together under these conditions either. But fortunately, this epic is still over. The same friend calls me and asks the address of the salon where his wife works. Listen, he said, it's all so cool and big. Where is it located? I need to buy a gift certificate. And while I'm there, maybe out of your tears, I'll talk to you. I gave him that address, the phone number. He called me back 2 hours later and told me his wife wasn't there. 2 counselors are there and no one from the bosses. But it's probably not her shift. I tell him, but my heart is restless. I take the car and go to the house. I come home and there is no one at home. Where is she then? I call her, she doesn't answer. I call her parents and she's not there either. The time had already come for the evening. I get in the car, go to her work, drove up, stood far away, waited. 8 o'clock p.m. comes up. I see Lisa coming out of this salon. And there's a guy next to her looking maybe 20 or 25. They go to his bad weather expensive and honest stamp. And in fact, they get in. I will not describe my emotions. They were contradictory. Well, on the one hand, at least I knew that my suspicions were not groundless. Well, on the other hand, I wanted to go out and ask questions directly. But luckily, I held back at the time. As it turned out, rightly so. I'm sitting here wondering where, in fact, they're going. They drove home. He dropped her off in front of our driveway and left. I immediately picked her up, parked my car right there and went straight up to her house. Opened the door with my key. She was already on her phone with someone. I took the cell phone out of her hand. And while it was unlocked, I went to her message. For this month, while she's been out here, let's say walking around. Apparently, my return wasn't really expected. So all the messages with this young, handsome guy, she did not delete at all. Anyway, I read everything in there. It turns out that in this main office, there is a management office. And this boy is actually, well, he's the son of one of the executives of this network. That's actually why you don't see him going up to her house. They had an office right at work for that. Now I see. That's actually why my friend today, when he came to the jewelry store, he didn't find Lisa at her workplace. The work must have been done in the office. Anyway, I didn't see any tears or sobs that night. She didn't really deny it. On the contrary, she finally told me all the things they'd been thinking about me for the past 2 years. Of course, they remembered the kiss on February 23rd, adding that that was just the tip of the iceberg. And supposedly, there's a bunch more betrayals behind me that she's sure she won't remember and figure out. That's it. Like I said, the whole situation is ambiguous. Somebody could say, it's your own fault. It was you on February 23rd kissed that lady. But I don't think that's a big deal. And it's a damn good excuse. And it's not a good excuse on February 23rd. He always thought his wife was just going to beauty salon treatments to keep her skin in shape. But when he happened to notice intimate treatments being performed right outside their apartment windows. But what he found out made him lose his head and raise a ruckus that all the neighbors in their building remembered. I want to tell you a truly detective story, witnesses, and even participants, which happened to be myself. Saturday evening, I received a phone call from a friend of mine. Where are you? What are you? How are you? Let's see you. We can even talk